Welcome to Bonn Park. I'm Sarah Geidlinger.
And I'm Marshall Ward.
And I'm August Swinson, First Nation artist.
Welcome to Bonn Park.
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 Can you do us a favor?
Can you please leave us a 5-star review, like or subscribe to our show, and share with your friends? We'd also love it if you followed us on social media.
We are a homegrown community project, and every bit helps. On with the show. This is it.
No, I mean,
Okay.
depends on where you want the show to go. This is totally up to you. All right. August Swinson, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
We're really excited to have you here. Man, has this been a process, us trying to connect. COVID. Do we do it in person or over Zoom? We've had a death in the family. We're sick. Now we're sick.
Yep.
I double booked months. I would say almost getting close to a year trying to connect.
For
so
sure.
I really appreciate you being patient and
welcome.
And friendly about trying to connect because we're so excited to have you on the show, especially we had your son Luke on the show last year.
Yep.
And while we were talking to Luke, local artist, he had an art piece behind him, and halfway through the conversation, he brought you up, and I said, "Is that your dad's work behind you there?" And he's like, "It is. How can you tell?" Like, me and Marshall dive deep when we start looking through things. We really start diving deep.
Luke is way more interesting than I am, by the way. So
we found him incredibly interesting. We had a fantastic conversation with him.
Yeah.
But we're so moved by the fact that you guys often get to work together, which is very unusual.
Yep.
You know, in the arts, I
Yep.
think it's unusual to be able to have that opportunity to collaborate on things.
Yes.
Your styles, I would not call them similar at all.
No.
They're very different, although some of the subject matter might overlap sometimes.
For sure, yeah.
Your base is, or your background is graphic arts, right?
Yep.
And you have a mixture of like both manually hand-drawn work and digital work.
That's correct.
And all of your pieces have this sort of delicious graphic arts touch to them that's very clean and proper. And man, do I enjoy looking at it.
That's fair. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. So Luke often, in articles on the radio on our show, attributes your influence being, part of his inspiration.
Well, he should.
He should. As parents, we should believe that.
Yeah. No, that is, it's a huge compliment. Yeah.
I think you mentioned there's several creative folks in your family.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. His sister's a really talented musician. His mom's a floral designer, but super creative person as well. So yeah, he comes by it honestly. Yeah.
So let's talk about your origins, the graphic arts.
Okay.
So schooling, what's your story there?
When I got married, I went to George Brown College, downtown Toronto, and took graphic design, 2-year diploma. And this was just before Macs were introduced. The year I graduated, it was the next year that they introduced Macs.
So you're using refill pens, Letraset, straight edges, S-curves, all this yummy stuff that's great for design of those days.
Exactly.
Getting ink all over your hands.
Yep. Oh, I hated it. I really did.
It's tedious.
It is. And I'm a neat freak. I really am. But I don't know if I've got oily skin or something, but in almost all my jobs, whenever we'd have to make, I can't even remember the term for it now, but the finished artwork that you would tape up and all that, I can't remember the name of it. My boss would say, "Go wash your hands. It looks dirty." So when Macs came along, when I got into computers, it was so good. It was such a relief for me because it's all on computer.
And what would that have been back then? Like early CorelDRAW or were you using more like
Aldus PageMaker?
Oh yeah.
Instead of Quark Express. Aldus Freehand instead of Adobe Illustrator, which I thought both programs were far superior to what was more commonly used. And yeah, so I taught myself all the programs. I bought a Mac and sat at it for 3 months just playing around and figuring things out. And so yeah, I'm kind of self-taught. Definitely self-taught when it comes to the computer. So.
This is how I operate too. Marshall's witnessed quite a bit. I'll just sort of make a promise like, yeah, I can do that. And he's like, you can? I'm like, well, I'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Just give me some time and we'll hack our way through this.
So my first computer had 20 megs of RAM, 120 meg hard drive, and everything was floppy disks. And I loved it.
Yeah. So that would have been like the 5.5-inch floppy, like the big.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
The hard disk.
Yep.
Have you heard, I'm monopolizing Marshall, I'll stop soon, that young people think that the save button on computer programs is a vending machine because they don't know that symbol? You know, the save button looks like a disc.
Does it?
Yeah, it's like a little. It's usually on icons. It's usually like a little square with the circle and a little another little rectangle that represents save to a external disk.
Oh.
And young people think it's a vending machine.
Oh, I'll have to look at that.
All right, I might cut that out if it doesn't translate.
I just drag and drop.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah.
Is it a competitive environment being in a graphic design program?
Yeah, that's why I got out, really. It's to me, it's a young person's game. And I was getting up in the years. So, yeah, I kicked around, had a really good job in Brantford, Ontario, of all places. Worked in a big company. We had a creative team, creative department, and a graphics department. This place was huge. And that was really unusual to be in the 2000s and have that still. Most people go to a service for their graphics, and we did everything in-house. But the company hit hard times after about 100 years, and I was let go and did freelancing for a while. But I shouldn't have been a graphic designer. I was an okay graphic designer. I'm a better illustrator. And that's kind of how I got my job. My boss wanted someone who could draw because he's very old school. And I knew enough about the programs. So I was hired. And but I'm not that techie. So yeah, after that, I realized that I was competing against almost programmers, The tech industry here was looking for graphic designers, but you had to have all this programming experience. And so I just faded away. Yeah.
There's a quality in your work that I find I'm left quite spellbound looking at it. The best way I can describe it is if I'm looking at a piece, it's maybe has some landscape qualities and some water. The surface is kind of otherworldly, like it's almost like little bubbles or something, like very translucent.
Cool.
And how is that achieved? Like that's an amazing part of your work, and it's not like you use it everywhere and often, but when I do see it, it's so beautiful. And like I said, it's like it's from I don't know, like I used to be in love with these books about the solar system before we had a lot of photographs, and people would do these illustrations of what maybe the surface of the moon Titan looks like or something, or Io, or just another worldly moon.
Yep.
And they used to use certain techniques to kind of create something that looks not like Earth.
Yep.
And I find that you've achieved that in this really beautiful, magical way, but I have no idea how you're doing it. It's almost almost painterly. Like,
yep.
Yeah. How are you doing it?
Well, I don't know.
I love this answer, August. It's so honest.
I'm glad you picked up on that, because I think I see it in my work, and yet I always have a hard time recognizing that I have a style or a look. I can go through my art and I see about four or five different styles that I pick on. Typically, I'll get onto a style, do 3 drawings, and get tired of it. That's why I envy graphic novelists, or people who do comics. I just don't have that repetitive nature. But when I started drawing. I remember the first time I drew a picture. I was 10 years old, living on the reserve, and my uncle was over, and I was drawing in the, in paperback books or any kind of book, novels, how the chapter starts halfway down the page, a new chapter. So there's this big blank area. And we didn't have a lot of money, so I drew on whatever I could, cereal boxes, whatever. I still have a hard time throwing cardboard and paper out because of that. But I think I was reading a book, or the chapter was called Indian Summer, and I drew a guy in a canoe, an Indian in a canoe. First Nation, sorry. And my mom and my uncle went on about it, and that really started me. So moved through the late 60s, early 70s, I was really into, I don't know how to describe it, the whole hippie culture, drug-influenced things. And I put that into my drawings. I liked fantasy. I liked surrealism. And I got away from that. Over the years, I got away from it. But I think that somehow in the background is brought out in my artwork. It's just how I see things. I
love that you said this, because another thing that I would say a lot of your artwork has is motion in the stillness. Stay with me here. For pieces that are even static, like a tree or a rock, there are little marks and little divots and little, almost like, I'm going to say like curves, little things that would imply motion. Is happening there.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. As an illustrator, I like to put as much detail as I can without getting really like. I think my artwork is super simple, but I know it can be too simple. So I like to add marks and texture in
Fighting that clean graphic artist background.
Yep, pretty much.
But you're not a one-trick pony, as many successful artists are, and there's nothing wrong with having one thing that you create over and over. You have many different styles.
Yeah, I think so. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, you have mark making that are distinctly your marks. And
yes.
I find there's something so powerful about some of your simpler pieces, and I mean it with a compliment, not simplistic, but simple. And I think about, there's a piece I love, has 2 polar bears kind of on the ground, and then one that's kind of like maybe a spirit polar bear.
Yep.
And it's a powerful story being told that I'm pretty sure is not being interpreted by everyone the same.
Right.
I have my own story of what that's about.
Yep.
But you must enjoy that part of it where you maybe you hear things from people that you weren't expecting about your work, that they, or how
Absolutely.
they read it.
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
You want to talk about that piece?
Well, I think the piece is like, it's changed. Like when I did that drawing, I think it's that drawing. I was I bought an iPad, and got Procreate and thought I'd do everything digitally, and just didn't like it. And I got rid of that iPad. And then a few months later, I was watching Luke do some stuff and thinking, I can do that. And so I got another one and got Procreate, and I was getting used to it.
There's a response time and a reaction you have to kind of get used to. Yeah,
definitely. And so I was getting used to Procreate when I did that drawing. And it I don't know, like sometimes I don't intend to do a drawing like that. I just add elements, and and do something with those elements that pleases me. And the whole idea of those 3 bears was, one of them dying and becoming a spirit. So it's just as simple as that.
That's such a powerful piece.
Thank you.
When you have a son who's an artist, do you see where they kind of start to hit their stride? I always think to myself, you can see it sometimes in creative people.
Yep.
Where suddenly it's kind of like, they got it. They know what
Yep.
they do well.
Yep.
And
It clicks kind
yeah,
of.
can you talk about Luke in that way and where you kind of
for
notice?
sure.
Because I find a lot of artists, they're doing at first is they're mimicking, like they're copying what they know. You know
Yep.
what I mean?
Absolutely.
But then somewhere along there, these little shifts happen.
Yeah, they find their own voice.
Yeah. Can you talk about Luke that way?
Yeah. Luke, boy, when he was, about 14, 15, all of a sudden, he was this really good drawer. And my whole thing about art, it's complicated, but I place a lot of value on drawing skills. And Luke just woke up one day, it seemed to me, and was this good artist. He resisted for years.
He mentioned that.
Yeah. He did not want to become an artist, probably because he saw how much money I was making at the time as a graphic artist.
We're artists, we get it.
But one day, I think it just, I don't know what his thinking was, but he gave into it. And he was really good. He was good at a different style. Like when you look at Luke's early work, he was more of a sketcher. He was really good with pencil sketches, portraits, that sort of thing. And he was like that for a couple of years. And then, bam, all of a sudden he found his style. And even that's developed to what it is today. But yeah, I remember it was probably about, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago that he really started to hit his stride.
Something that Marshall mentioned earlier about finding that piece powerful, the polar bear piece, very powerful. And for me, I'm looking at it now on my screen right now. There's 2 installations at the Huron Natural area,
right?
2 murals, yours and Luke's beside each other.
Yep.
And my parents are long gone. They were very creative, very cool makers in their time when they were well. But to have a piece beside,
I know, it's crazy
your
cool.
family like that.
And the cool thing about that is that Elsa recorded a video in front of those pieces. So that was, doubly cool.
Yeah. And so we were talking about, there's lots of collaborations that you've done together and lots of work. And I'm sure you talk about work all the time as well, pushing ideas sort of back and forth. But at the same time, it's still separate, right? It's not like it's like, here's Team Swinson, hire us today sort of thing. It's separate and it's honoring each other when you're working together. And you find a way to make them mix without it being disconjointed, without it being obvious.
Yep.
Do you think that's coming naturally, or are you sitting there poring over these decisions?
No, it comes naturally, and it's I think it's becoming less because Alana and him are a couple, so she's becoming more of an influence in his life and artwork, which is very cool.
And as it should be when you become a grown up and you find your path.
Yeah, right? Yeah. But yeah, Luke and I have had some really cool opportunities. And this isn't a great example of it, but kind of. He got to do a big exterior mural. I know you can see it from City Hall downtown on the side of a big high-rise. And he did a heron. And then I got to do one on Frederick Street. And it just so happens that a heron was chosen as the piece. So that's just such a coincidence. But yeah, I love, if you've seen Luke's story recently, he posted a couple of pictures from 2004
I
where
saw those.
he first...
It's like 10 years old.
Yeah. The first time he helped me with a mural. And that was very cool. And we've had, a few really cool opportunities to work together.
Marshall, let's take a break to hear from this week's sponsors. These are all local businesses that we truly believe in, and it's their support that keeps Bonn Park Podcast going. Bonn Park is supported by Taco Farm.
Mexican-inspired and locally sourced, Taco Farm celebrates one of the world's great cuisines while supporting small farms right here in Waterloo Region.
Taco Farm makes everything in-house, right down to the tortillas, hot sauces, salsas, and infusions.
The food is fresh and full of rich flavors and firmly rooted in Mexico while still leaning heavily into the Fat Sparrow, food that really schmecks, adopted philosophy. The whole menu, from the amazing fries supreme to their famous tacos, fried chicken, nachos, and literally the whole enchilada, is gluten-free.
Except for the dessert churros, which are outstanding if you're okay with gluten. Taco Farm's restaurant is at 8 Herb Street in Uptown Waterloo near King, and they're on DoorDash, Skip the Dishes, and Uber Eats. Want to eat local but take your taste buds international? Taco Farm has your ticket. Bonn Park is supported by Herb and Good Family Funeral Home. We all come from the earth, and we all eventually return to the earth, ashes to ashes and dust to dust. So it makes sense that one of our most important cultural services, a funeral, be respectful of the planet. Herb and Good Funeral Home is a pioneer of the so-called green funeral movement. They underwent an internal audit to identify practices that can provide excellent service to families and loved ones while minimizing the impact on the environment. These changes include phasing in replacing incandescent light bulbs with LEDs, along with utilizing the science of near formaldehyde-free embalming fluids. As the area's longest-serving family funeral home, Herb and Good has helped people in the Waterloo region through difficult times over the past 77 years, and have the experience and flexibility to exceed your expectations. The caring staff, family ownership, personal guidance, facilities, and reasonable prices have become the hallmark of their service. They are steeped in tradition, but with a keen eye for more sustainable ways to provide their valuable service and support. Herb and Good Family Funeral Home is located at 171 King Street South in Waterloo, or visit herbgood.com.
Bonn Park is supported by North Country Condiments.
Made right here in Waterloo Region by 2 award-winning chefs, North Country Condiments strives to unite their culinary expertise with your inspired creations. North Country Condiments believe that the best ingredients make for the best food, which is why they use only the freshest ingredients to create the most flavorful sauces possible. Lovers of all things spicy will delight, as North Country's fresh, mouth-watering concoctions are made in small batches and bursting with flavor, like their signature slow-burn hot sauce, with just enough heat to make you sweat while packing in a punch to any dish.
Just in time for grilling season, their sweet spice barbecue sauce will satisfy all your barbecuing needs, while their versatile and tangy smoked apple mustard is the perfect sauce for your charcuterie board or cheese plate. Make something tasty this summer with North Country's authentic, handcrafted condiments. Your taste buds will thank you.
Visit northcountrycondiments.com and don't forget to subscribe to their mailing list to stay up to date on all their special offers.
Bonn Park is supported by Heartbeat Hot Sauce.
All of Heartbeat's sauces are made with maximum flavor and balance in mind.
They've got a range of flavors including red habanero, jalapeno, pineapple habanero, blueberry habanero, piri-piri, and a scorching scorpion pepper sauce.
Heartbeat Hot Sauce ferments their peppers using traditional methods, then cooks them with a few simple, high-quality ingredients. They add no water, thickening agents, or chemical preservatives. Their sauce is fresh and natural.
Whether you're a spice junkie or have milder tastes, Heartbeat has a flavor for your palate.
You can find Heartbeat Hot Sauce in specialty shops like Vincenzo's and select Loblaws and Sobeys supermarkets.
Visit them at heartbeathotsauce.com and follow them on Instagram and Facebook.
Treat your tongue to some exciting new flavors that will raise your heartbeat. Boom, boom,
Boom, boom, boom. Yeah. Bonn Park is supported by Wordsworth Books, located in the vibrant heart of Uptown Waterloo.
Celebrating 36 years, Wordsworth Books remains dedicated to stocking the very best in new Canadian and international fiction, thought-provoking nonfiction, cookbooks, DVDs, and a carefully curated selection of children's picture books and young adult novels. Co-owners Mandy Browse and David Worsley are happy to special order any title you are looking for, and pride themselves on being able to obtain the hard to find and the out of print. This is true. They have found a lot of titles for me and my family. Along with organizing between 15 and 20 author readings and other events each year, Wordsworth Books supports numerous book clubs for literary fiction, sci-fi and fantasy, mystery, books for babies, and several food-themed reading groups.
Support a local gem like Wordsworth Books. which is so much more than just a great bookstore. It is a one-of-a-kind gathering space and a vital part of the region's cultural community. Find Wordsworth Books online at wordsworthbooks.com or visit them at 96 King Street South in Uptown Waterloo.
You might even see us there. And now back to the show. So even though the murals are all hip and the whole thing now, you were working on them way back when they were still new.
Yep.
This was like a huge full wall at Casino.
Yeah, I think the dimensions were. Well, that was the second mural I did for that casino. The first one was 12 feet high, I think, by 200 feet long, and then this one was about 100 feet long by roughly the same height. So yeah, Luke just came along and picked up a brush and filled in shapes, but it was meaningful and fun.
And obviously left an impact.
Yeah. And if I can add, that mural was hugely inspired, and I didn't even realize it at the time, by my grandfather. So my mom and us 5 kids lived with our grandfather on the reserve. He was chief at one time, but a simple countryman, but he was artistic, and I think he was my biggest influence in my life. And I didn't realize that until probably about close to 8-10 years ago. When I sketch, I intentionally draw with rough lines, repeated rough lines, so it looks very sketchy. And I realized that that's how my grandfather drew. So that was cool to realize that. And going back to what you said about my otherworldly look in some of my drawings, the other biggest influence in my life was Jack Kirby. Just love his style of graphics, the way he draws everything. Huge influence in my life.
So that's where Luke would have seen those Jack Kirby comics.
Yep,
on that, yeah,
for sure. Yeah, and we're both huge Seth fans from Guelph, of course. So yeah.
Oh wait, before we move on, you mentioned your Instagram stories. When in the world did your mother meet Morgan Freeman? There is a picture of your mother and Morgan Freeman together in your Instagram stories.
It's funny. In her kitchen, she's got a picture of her deceased husband, but more prominently, there's a picture of Morgan Freeman in her. He did some kind of, I think it was a National Geographic documentary out on Scugog Island, where we're from, and most of the band members got to meet him.
That's great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's an awesome photo.
Yeah.
I imagine something you see in Luke's work that he probably saw in yours first was his brilliant use of color harmonies. And I'll give an example of a piece of yours that I think has got to be my favorite piece. So it's a songbird on a branch, right?
Right.
And on the left, it's just an opaque color field of, I don't always remember colors well, so I could be off here. Maybe a blue, right? On the right, it would be yellow.
Think Ukraine, because that's what it was done for.
Yeah, Ukraine, that's what it is.
Yep.
Well, this is interesting because I immediately thought of flags, but not so much the colors as much as that branch is treated. I love flags of the world, and I love U.S. state flags, like the Chicago flag and that. And the way you treated that branch is kind of like the way some of my favorite flags would be like maybe the Trinidad and Tobago that has a very angular.
Right.
You would appreciate flags because of the graphics nature of them. And even if those hadn't been the colors you used in that piece, that I believe that piece of art has all the amazing aesthetics and power of some of the best flags of the world.
Thank you.
So that's so interesting because I never did think Ukraine.
Right.
When I saw that.
Right.
I simply thought, this is an amazing image of how you captured the essence of a songbird.
Yep.
And it especially appealed to me because I love flags.
Cool.
And 2 color fields put together that way.
Very nice.
With a simple division line.
Yeah.
That's amazing that's what you had in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's nice to hear that because that was done so fast. That drawing was like within a couple of hours. I sat down at my iPad and I had to do something, you know. So, yeah, and I do love flags too. I love old provincial flags, like, you know, they've got that old look to them. And speaking on that, the early 60s were a big influence on me. The culture, the graphics, all that stuff. So, you know, the Centennial Triangle flag, 1967, that period really is meaningful to me. I love all that stuff. I used to draw Pierre Trudeau and Robert Stanfield and all those guys. And the space race back then, you know, I was always drawing, you know, rocket ships and space machines. And so that was a huge influence on me too.
Yeah, and that would all tie back into Jack Kirby and everything
Yep.
you would have seen.
Yep.
Provincial flags, you didn't find them kind of overly complicated sometimes? Sometimes they try to pack a lot of information.
They
in.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they certainly wouldn't work today if someone came up with a flag, but I just love that vintage look. You know.
Oh, I'm just looking at the Centennial flag now. Yes, I do know what this one is. I couldn't remember what it was. It's so simple.
Yeah.
It's the perfect graphic, really.
When you come upon one of your murals that you haven't seen in a while, let's say a lot of time passes, months, maybe even a year or so, and you come upon one and see it again with fresh eyes, what do you usually see when you see your murals?
Brilliance. No, I like it. When I look at my old stuff, I have this thing about me. I don't think I get better. I was as good back in the early 80s or late 70s even as I am now. I just do things differently.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that differently, though. Like, sorry to speak over you. What's the differently? It's your subject matter, obviously, that you've been diving into.
Yeah, somewhat, but more so the whole introduction of the computer and how I do things. Yeah, I really do long for just sitting on a lake shore and drawing the opposite shore. That's what I love. And kind of that's how I really started. We used to rent a cottage up north, and I remember being on Balsam Lake and just looking at the shoreline.
I'm very familiar with Balsam Lake.
Yeah, and it, you know, Balsam Lake isn't one of the most beautiful lakes, but it's got the whole Kawartha vibe. And I just took a fine tip marker and a drawing pad and just did these very simple lines for the shoreline and trees, and I did a whole series of them, and I still really like those. So yeah, they still creep into my work sometimes.
So when you picture that, what are your tools? Is it pencils? Is it paint? Is it markers? Is it pens?
Just either pencil or pen. Yeah.
Very simple.
Yep.
Do you ever like scan one of your sketches and then you're going to manipulate them later? Yeah.
Like, it's funny, a lot of what you see on my Instagram, and I don't have a web page. I used to, but it just wasn't all that useful to me. But if you look at a lot of my drawings, like a lot of it doesn't exist anywhere, because I'll scan a sketch and then do some simple coloring and put it on Instagram. So people often will say, is that piece available? Can I buy that? And like, well, it's really just a piece of scrap paper that I threw color on.
When did Waterloo Region begin to feel like home? And it doesn't fully feel like home.
Yeah, does
like,
it?
Real sense of belonging here?
It does now. So we moved here from, when my wife and I got married, we lived in downtown Toronto, had a blast for a few years, moved back out to the country where we were both from, up by Lindsay. Then we moved up to Gravenhurst and Bracebridge. And then so when I graduated from George Brown with a diploma in graphic design, I kicked around to silly little print shops and stuff, wasn't really going anywhere. So my father, who I wasn't really close with, but he was artistic as well, and he was a sign painter, sign writer. And so I fell back on that training and became a sign writer for years, and got a job in Lindsay, eventually got a job that took me up to Gravenhurst and Bracebridge. Then I got a decent sign job in Collingwood. Excuse me. And we thought we were there for good because we loved it. You know, we had a nice little wartime home.
Georgian Bay is beautiful, although always cold.
Yeah. And the fumes and the lead paint and the lacquer thinners got to me. So I did a business plan, hit the government up for a grant, bought my first Mac, and that's when I taught myself everything. And eventually got a job down in Bridgeport. Is that the name of it? Just outside of town?
Mm-hmm.
Bridgeport. Yep. That didn't last long, and eventually got the job down Brantford. So for about 10 years, I was always driving out of the city in the dark and coming home in the dark. And so it took me about 12 years to feel at home here. And yeah, so it's taken quite a while. So it's probably only been about 15 years where I've been comfortable here. So
what I really like about this idea of coming out of college is I heard you say like you kicked around in print shops, you know, the towns you mentioned are Lindsay, Bracebridge, Gravenhurst. Is this what you had imagined? Had you pictured I'm going to rocket, like put a rocket on my back and take off into the world of graphic arts and be big time, or did you have an idea that you might move around quite a bit throughout Ontario? And
one thing about me is I never think ahead, so I just go with what's in front of me. So I never thought anything. I never thought, I'll be a graphic designer. I'm still waiting to make it big, so that wasn't part of the process.
Well, you're
for
on
me.
Bonn Park, so you're
Yes.
basically.
Yes.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, definitely. But no, you know what?
Oh, he's at like 6 times the amount of followers that we have online.
yeah.
Even though I had a career in graphic design, it got better as I got older. And when I left that business, I had a good job. I was making good money, but I didn't like the work. I really didn't. It was
I've been there.
stifling creatively. And so I didn't really kind of find my artistic voice seriously until a few years ago. And so even though I consider myself semi-retired, it seems to keep getting better and better. So I'm almost drawn back into it, almost full time. So,
And how have you witnessed the creative community in this area over your years here? Like, I loved the piece that you did for the Bee Sting, which was you did a piece for the 44 Gaukel Arts Creative Building. Did the Bee Sting, and I think you did legs. I know every time I hear it,
bee sting.
every time someone says it to me, I'm like, why are we talking
bee
about
sting.
bee stings?
Yeah.
Which is, this project is influenced by, I think it's called The Monster or something like that from the 20s,
Right.
Man Ray, and everybody did this thing. And this was like My Pet Skeleton, 44 Gaukel Arts
Yep.
Collective. And it's still ongoing, the project.
Unfortunately, that all happened during COVID.
Yeah,
So it was me in a room by myself. So
And they film you, right? Tell us about
Yes.
that process.
Yeah. I think Eric comes in, makes sure I'm ready, hits the button, and walks out. So it's kind of a solo thing, even though, it looks like it's a collaborative thing. But it was me in a room, so.
I've heard a couple artists say, like, I don't know why I'm doing the Bee Sting. Like, I don't think it fits. I think it all fits. It's supposed to be. I mean, for anyone who doesn't know what this is, go check it out.
Yep.
At 44 Gaukel, there's
Yeah,
a
it's
Bee
pretty
Sting
awesome.
Gone, which
It
is super cool.
It is very cool.
Built by Adam from Boko.
Yep,
and his
Schwarzenegger.
team.
Yep.
Thank you. A name I always struggle with, even though mine's Geidlinger.
Yeah.
And it's, creating basically a monster or a creature with, everyone takes a different part of the body. And you did these like knees to legs, and there was like a claw for one foot and a regular foot for the other one. And did you have a plan going into this, or did you just kind of go in and be like, let's start?
Well, I thought about what I was doing before and did a quick sketch of it, just simple, but I wanted to make sure that I was doing it fresh. So I just had that in my mind and went in and did it, Like you said, it's not my style. That's not what I would normally draw, but I thought I can do this. I've got the skills as an illustrator that I can at least make it look okay. After that was done, I wish I had gone a little heavier in detail with it. I think if you look at my contribution, it looks a little kind of sparse.
Well, there are some people that stayed very simple and some people that filled the whole page.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. So it just depends on the artist that's taking a crack at it. And they're all very different.
Yeah, they are.
Incredibly
That's
different.
the beauty of it, right?
And I like the tower, how you can turn
Love
it and piece things together differently.
You can take great pride and great satisfaction in all the work you created, your big body of work over the years. We're talking decades and moving through 3 different eras even, here in Canada. But I can't imagine what it's like for you to stand, let's say, on King Street by Toy Soup in St. Jacobs and look at that mural that your son Luke made. You're in that mural, your father's in that mural, who's Luke's grandfather. If you could just imagine standing there by yourself on a quiet day, or you know how quiet St. Jacobs can be in the morning, the village?
Yep.
Because I've stood there, I've spent time looking at that mural by myself, so I know what that feels like. But what in the world kind of feelings go through a father standing there looking at a piece like that?
Well, it's very important. It's very meaningful. And if I can talk for a minute about that mural, I'm glad you brought that up, because we were both asked to do murals. So I was to design one for Halls Lane, and I gave them 2 options. And he was to design the one in St. Jacobs, and he gave them 2 options. One was his and one was mine. Same with the Halls Lane one. I gave them one of mine and one of Luke's. And his mural, they picked my design. And my mural, they picked his design. So both of those were really both of us designing and, making the mural. So that was super fun. Yeah. And I love Luke's style. It's so different from mine. He's more painterly, sweeping lines and gradients, and whereas mine's more hard. So in St. Jacobs, the animal pieces were my drawings. Those were mine. His was more the background. So we did plywood cutouts and applied them to the wall. So yeah, that was a very cool job. And it's always super fun and meaningful to do work with Luke. I love him and I love his work. Yeah.
Bonn Park is made possible with the support of the Kitchener Public Library and the Kitchener-Waterloo Community Foundation.
Our show is produced by Sara Geidlinger
and Marshall Ward,
with audio engineering by Sara Geidlinger.
Bonn Park's original music is by Alan Lung. Harry, still with us? We want to tell you about a fun project that we have. Are you ready?
Yeah.
We have another podcast called An Unscripted Spectacle, Wrestling with Wrestling. Here's Colin Hunter of Kayfabe News to tell you all about it.
Welcome to An Unscripted Spectacle, Wrestling with Wrestling. I'm Colin Hunter from Kayfabe News. Marshall is utterly obsessed with professional wrestling. Sara is utterly perplexed by professional wrestling. On each episode of An Unscripted Spectacle, Marshall and Sara talk with a different guest from the world of wrestling. Promoters, referees, journalists, and current and past stars of the Squared Circle to talk deeply about the strange magic of professional wrestling that has enchanted Marshall his whole life. Can they turn Sara into a fellow connoisseur of professional wrestling? She'll need some convincing.
find out who Jimmy Corderas is.
Who the heck are you?
Oh, well, that's a good question. For those who don't know, I spent the better part of over 2 decades working in WWF/WWE, mostly as a referee inside the ring.
I have the honor of meeting the magnificent Lufisto.
I heard that you were described as the first lady of hardcore. I've just recently found out what hardcore is.
Yeah, thanks to Madman Pondo.
When I've learned that I was going to be inducted, it was like, it is now my time to tell the story of women's wrestling. Because so many times I've heard, oh, this is the first time this happens in women's wrestling history. And I'm like, no.
I learned all about the storytelling and writing process from Tom Casiello.
Yeah, I was in soap operas for 14 years. I was at Young and the Restless last. That was from 2009 to 2011. And so I thought, I'll go in for the interview. I'll be honest with them. If I blow it, I blow it. Not the end of the world. And I was there for 6 years. And I rose up the ranks to managing lead writer. And it was the most insane time period of my entire life.
I got a new skincare regime from RJ City.
Checking out your hair, and I wish that mine looked like yours. You have beautiful locks.
Thank you. The secret, this isn't a plug, it feels like an endorsement, is aloe vera. I have it here. I put it on my skin. I put it in my hair. I use the gel. I put a couple drops of peppermint in.
I have a plant right there on my
Good.
fridge.
Cut it open, squeeze it out, and put it, honestly, wherever you want. It's good for you.
I find out that Colt Cabana is just famous enough that he can still buy groceries. And Tyson Kidd tells me all about the People's Elbow. Who knew?
Basically comes to a complete stop, then brings his leg over the guy like he's going to do a leg drop. But the leg like keeps circling past the guy, and then he drops an elbow on the guy.
Oh, and the elbow represents like all the people of the fans?
That's
like he's been voted, he's going to drop this elbow?
Well, like he started calling himself the People's Champion, and then that move just became the People's Elbow.
And then there's also, as you know, there's the People's Strudel.
Yeah. I mean, there's the People's Eyebrow. There's a lot of the people. Got a lot of people.
So check out an unscripted spectacle, Wrestling with Wrestling. Available anywhere you get your podcasts.